Welcome back to this post-lunch session on jobs and ease of doing business. This panel is moderated by Mr. Bhushan Mohan, who's Senior Fellow, Koch Development Foundation and former Principal Consultant, NEGD, Ministry of Information Technology. Mr. Bhushan is an industry veteran, and he worked as Principal Consultant, NEGD, Ministry of Electronics and IT, and was responsible for formulation of policies, guidelines, and strategy for implementation of NEGP, with a vision to bring public services within the reach of every citizen. He has contributed extensively in areas of policy formulation, strategic planning, business development, procurement, and technology assessment. May I now invite Mr. Bhushan Mohan to take over and run with the proceedings.
Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome you for this session, a very, very important session on ease of doing business and jobs. Especially in the time of COVID, it has become even more important. Ease of doing business has been one of the priority areas of Government of India and various state governments. Way back in 2019, we took a big leap as far as the global rating is concerned on the ease of doing business. However, by mid-2020, because of the pandemic and the lockdown, although our ease of doing business was there, but it severely affected the jobs and the jobs creation, the job market as such. And it's not only for the middle class, it was really the lower class which was affected. A lot of industries closed. There was migrant labor which were there. They went back or started going back. There was a reverse flow, so on and so forth. So this has been an area of major concern. However, as they say, every problem has a silver lining, and that also gives us an opportunity to really do something innovative and to really think out of the box. Under the overall guidelines which had been issued, several of the states and several of even the private industry took very, very innovative measures. And it's a pleasure today to really have some of those case studies to be presented in today's forum. There were a lot of innovative action which was taken. And today what we specifically talk about are some of the actions taken in the state of Telangana, Karnataka, Odisha, and not only that, even by some of the people in the private industry. So let me first invite Mrs. Shailaja Rama Iyer, Commissioner, Department of Handlooms, Telangana. She took a couple of very interesting initiatives which have really I think it has given a very good outcome and a positive results to the end user, that is the labor class who were actually affected because of this problem. So over to Mrs. Rama Iyer for her to talk about what they did in the state of Telangana.
I'm the first to start off. So I think to set the tone for the panel discussion from my side, I have two different projects which actually we have taken up and which are part of my brief discussion. One is what we called a 40% input subsidy linked wage compensation scheme called Chenetha Mitra, which we implemented in the handloom sector. And the other was the Telangana Textile and Apparel Policy Project, which was also meant to improve the ease of doing business in Telangana in the textile sector. Now, I'll just give a brief of both. I'm not going to talk about the schemes. What I would like to say about the Chenetha Mitra, which was implemented in the handloom scheme in the handloom sector, is this scheme in particular was meant to improve productivity and enable more jobs in the handloom sector. And it was not meant to be just a dole or a subsidy pay up that we are giving to the weavers. actually linked to productivity, and through improved productivity to enable more buffer wages or more subsidy to the handloom weavers. In what happened in the past 1 year is actually, though coronavirus has led to extreme difficulties in the entire handloom sector, the sector did not close down. Because of this scheme, actually more weavers continued to weave, even though they had a lot of difficulties with procuring yarn in the month of May and June last year. Once the yarn supply started coming in, the weavers came back to the profession, continued to weave, and they continued to get this additional subsidy in the form of wages from the Cheniyata Mitra scheme, because of which we've not had any unemployment problems in the handloom sector. And this is a distressed sector, largely in the informal sector. So this has been a great benefit for us. We've also, the major gains from this scheme have been, we've addressed the entire sector, both cooperative as well as outside the cooperative fold. And because of that, all the weavers have been covered in the state, enabled ancillary workers to also get the benefits of this scheme. And we've also ensured the scheme is based on a software or an online application registration and the DBT method of delivery of the subsidy. This enabled improved scheme application and improved business of the weavers with the government. We've already disbursed 11.57 crores in the past 2 years, and we've had a 30% increase in the income of weavers and ancillary workers over their wages because of this scheme. So we've also minimized the human interference in the online operations by ensuring that all the operations are on the online method. The second one is, of course, the TTAP, which is the Telangana Textile and Apparel Policy. Now, this policy has been had come in from the year 2016, but we realized that if we really want to make a difference in the ease of doing business, we have to ensure improved accountability and transparency. And that meant ensuring that the procedures are clearly in place and the application process has specific time deadlines. And thirdly, that whatever we do, we ensure that if the government for some reason is delaying the entire process, it is not the fault of the applicant, the subsidy applicant, and therefore we will have to take the responsibility for those sort of problems. So what we've done as far as the TTAP is concerned is, firstly, we've ensured a prompt settlement of incentive claims. Either we approve or we reject, and we do this within 18 working days. Process transparency, tracking of both the present information as well as the old information related to that textile unit, then better compliance to guidelines, and improved automated decision making and rule-based decision making, because there was no files, there's no paper running, there's no manual method by which the whole subsidy claim was being settled, and an ease of filing applications for the applicants, so that at any point of time they can apply through the online mode, irrespective of whether the office is functioning or not. So I'll just close with this, and I'd like to say that as far as ease of doing business is concerned, if I may give my 1-minute thought on that, I think at this critical juncture, if we need to provide jobs or we need to enable the job productivity for people right across the textile sector, it is essential that government looks at how can we ensure that whatever productivity is already there, we enable improvement in that productivity. And some of what we did in Cheniyata Mitra was just that. So if the wages are 8,000, we buffer the wages with an additional 3,000 to 4,000 rupees to ensure a decent wage to the weaver. And I think that if we are not going to be able to provide this sort of buffer, the present situation is going to lead to a lot of further employment distress right across the sector. And as far as TTAP is concerned, despite the coronavirus, we found that because the textile sector is offering incentives and we've continued to ensure applications come in, 13 applications were filed even during the coronavirus period. And various applicants are in the process of getting their claims verified and finalized in the present. So I think obviously an online system makes for greater efficiency, greater accountability from the side of government. It enables easier business with the government. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I think you have done an excellent initiative on both the sides. And I find that to really get the proper results, you have used the technology in a very, very effective manner. Now, one of the real advantage of using technology is to have everything in a quantified manner, that you are able to quantify and measure your results very well. And I was going through your report and found that you have actually achieved a fairly good outcome. Can you throw some light on the first project which you talked about, which is the productivity linked incentive and wages, what you have given to the handloom workers? What has been the productivity increase over this particular period that your project has run?
Found that they could get more wages, more buffer wages through the Chinita Mitra scheme. And as I had mentioned in my presentation, yarn subsidy 50%. Out of this 50%, 40%, master weaver gets 5%. The weavers and the ancillary workers get 35%. So this 35% would work out to a pretty large amount. Once they saw that they are able to get this additional amount, what we found is up to 10 to 20% productivity improvement has happened on ground. Weavers who are migrants have come back. We've actually registered another 800 temporary geotag looms, because these are migrants who migrated to auto driving or to doing watchman jobs, who came back because they saw that there was adequate wages to be earned through this sector. That has happened in this past 1 year. 800 additional geotag looms have come into the sector. Second, those who are already producing, the productivity improved by 10 to 20%. I mean, I'm taking your suggestion and getting a detailed case study done, because we don't have enough case studies with us. So that is something that I will probably take up, so that I can actually come out with clear evidential proof that the productivity has also improved. So what I do have is our own assessment.
No, that is excellent. My only suggestion is, if you can come out with the figures as to how much yarn they were producing earlier and how much yarn was ultimately produced after this particular scheme was brought in, because that directly talks about how much they have produced vis-a-vis your benefit that you have passed on. Let me now go
to
the...
I can.
Okay, good. We will come back for some questions later. Let me now go to the next one, to the state of Karnataka. Mr. Narasimha Murthy, Additional Labour Commissioner, you have also done something very innovative in your state. Can you share with us what exactly has been done?
Good afternoon to everybody. Last time also we have a detailed discussion, and I would like to reiterate what we have done, what I have spoke last time. So in the state of Karnataka, the online application has been developed for registration, renewal and amendment under various labor acts. All the 6 or 7 acts, under all the acts, these online applications have been developed and it has been kept on force. And also we have got a state act called Shops and Commercial Establishment Act. Under this act, we have also introduced instant registration. The moment he made an application for registration, and the entrepreneur, the owner of the shop, will get the registration certificate immediately. And also we have introduced auto renewal for registration of Shops and Commercial Establishment Act, and also Contract Labor Registration and Regulation Abolition Act. And even under the Interstate Migrant Workers Act also, there is auto renewal has been introduced in Karnataka. So with all these things, the employers or the contractor or the principal employers need not have to come to the office. They can sit in their office, in their factory, in their enterprise, in their shop, and they can take the license, that they make the renewal, and amendment also can be done. So all this has been done in Karnataka. And we have also introduced the inspection system has been slightly streamlined, which is a core area for even the entrepreneurs also. Online inspection system has been introduced, and there is a random selection of establishments, and there is no inspection by individual officers. It is going to be an online inspection. All the details have been enshrined in that guidelines. And there is also provision for online filing of single integrated returns under all applicable labor laws, including the Shop Act, Contract Labor Act, and all other acts. And we have also made some provision for a facility to maintain registers and records through online. That has been also introduced now. And also we have made a facility for online payment of labor welfare fund. We have in Karnataka, we have one state act called Labor Welfare Fund Act, out of which a board has been constituted, and even the money has been collected on a pro rata basis, 20, 40, 20 rupees. And we are implementing certain labor, schemes under that particular act. Even there also, we have made that is online payment by the entrepreneurs, and the employer has to, they can straight away deposit this share of amount to the board, and even government contribution is also there, workers contribution is also there. That is deducted in the month of December in one shot, that is in the salary of the December. So all these things we have done it in Karnataka. All this will help employers or the entrepreneurs, and they need not have to come to the office. They can sit in their office. They can function well without the public interface, without the interference of the officers. These are the things we have done mainly in Karnataka, apart from all so many other things. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. I think this has been a very good initiative, what you have just talked about. It is really in line with the thinking that there should be as little personal interaction. It should be more from your own side through electronic interface, so that whatever data and whatever information is required, it can be filled up at one place, and the applications and other things can be processed accordingly. Now, in doing that, what is the feedback of the end user and the stakeholders? Have you been able to get that information?
There is a very good response from the employers, because they are very happy that their work is done at their doorsteps. There are a lot less number of complaints, almost no complaints now regarding, because they need not have to come to the office. They are very happy about the online features introduced by the state of Karnataka.
Oh, that is very good. That is excellent, excellent. So, what, in your opinion, the initiative that you have taken really results in moving on ease of doing business at a national level or in the international rankings which we do?
See, in Karnataka, whatever the information given by DIPP, Government of India, has been fully complied with. And even the employers, everybody are cooperating with the departments, and there is all departments have come under the aegis of the Industries and Commerce Department. And there is a wing called Karnataka Udyoga Mitra, which is called the nodal agency for receiving all these applications. They are the mother of all these things, and we are one of the component of this CUM. And this CUM, where it is stationed in the Industries Commerce Department, they will take care of all the applications. They will process it immediately, and they will coordinate with the entrepreneurs. So by doing all these things, I think the employers are very happy, and they are getting the things at one particular point, one stop. And because of this, there is a lot of boost for these investors, and also for the newcomers, especially these small industries, small scale industries, and other.
Excellent. I think some of the things that you have adopted can very well be replicated in the other states also. And that is one thing that we should give a push. I also see there is another project also, which initiative you had taken on the COVID-19 relief measures for the construction and unorganized workers. What was this? Can you throw some light on that also?
Last time I spoke in very detail about the initiatives taken by the state of Karnataka in mitigating the miseries of these migrant workers, and also the construction workers, even the unorganized sector workers also. The state of Karnataka, under the aegis of under the Disaster Management Act, Revenue Department and Urban Development Department and Disaster Management Wing, we have worked as a subsidiary, and we have taken all the measures for these construction workers and even the migrant workers. For example, we have arranged for food, cooked food for nearly 8 to 10 lakh people who are stationed in Karnataka, especially in Bangalore. Bangalore is the hub of all industrial this thing. So we have taken care of the food. Apart from all other district, in the district headquarters, the deputy commissioners have taken umpteen number of initiatives to ensure that nobody starves without food. That has been taken care in Karnataka last time. And 89 lakh cooked food has been served during the pandemic period. And we have also distributed because some people, because it is a migration from so many states, sometimes the food may not be good for them. That is why we have started providing food grains also, food kits comprising of 14 to 15 items worth nearly 800 rupees. Such nearly 7.3 lakh food grain kits have been distributed throughout the state of Karnataka, especially to the migrant workers. And that is a major issue, this thing which we have taken care. And also to mitigate the financial hardship of these construction workers, government of Karnataka has taken a decision to give one-time assistance of 5,000 rupees for these construction workers. We have got construction boards and we have got a lot of money in the construction board. And last year we have given 5,000 rupees to nearly 16.45 lakh construction workers, amounting to 825 crores. 825 crores amount has been paid to construction workers in the last year during this pandemic time, which has really helped. When we have conducted field studies, people are so happy that we have received money, 5,000 rupees money we have received, and they're so happy. They expressed their happiness about the working of the construction workers welfare board. And there is also the problem of these migrant laborers who are stranded in Karnataka and so many other parts of Karnataka, and who are willing to go back to their respective states. Fortunately, Government of India has introduced special Samik trains, and by like a war footing, the state of Karnataka has organized to send these workers, migrant workers to the respective states. They have been registered in the Seva Sindhu portal. All the worker names, everything has been registered, and very systematically they have been deported to their respective states. While sending them to the states, we have also assured that they should not go starve. Then the food, the packets have been issued in to each and every worker, including the children, and nearly 4.5 lakh people have been sent officially through the Shramik trains. Apart from some people, thousands of people have been sent through buses also to the nearby states. So this is one of the major this thing. Apart from this, for the unorganized sector workers, apart from the construction, unorganized sector, we have identified two categories: barbers and washermen. For these two category of workers, the government has announced a 5,000 rupees one-time payment assistance. Nearly 1.4 lakh people have been taken the benefit. Nearly 60 crores, I think, 59 to 60 crore amount has been paid to these workers. These are some of the main, apart from so many other initiatives taken by the government of Karnataka.
Okay, it's excellent. I think people have really benefited from this. I hope during the present outbreak, the second phase, you have not faced similar problems of the migrant labor and other things.
Yeah, the migrant problem is a very serious problem. The state of Karnataka, while declaring the curfew, they have allowed the industry sector to function, especially the industry sector and also the construction sector. So that is why they were very happy that since the working is going on in the industries and also in the construction sites, many people decided to stay back. But of course, here and there, some people who are very panicked, they want to go back because the situation is very severe in Karnataka. The number of cases, COVID cases, are rising very alarmingly, and fearing that some people are going on their own. They are going, but we have assured them that no need to go back to their states. We will give all protection. We will give all help. We will give food, shelter, everything, and also we will assure them all protection. That is why we have not so far. We have not seen such a kind of rush back to the respective states.
Good. That's excellent. That's excellent. Okay, let me now move over from the government sector to the private sector, some of the initiatives which have been taken. I would like to invite Mr. Abhishek Agarwal.
Thank you, Mr. Bhushan. Good afternoon and good morning from my side. I'm right now in US, basically. So, I mean, I'll talk more from, the end user perspective, because I started this company back in India in 2016. So it's been close to like 4 or 5 years now that we are in the business. But what I can experience is, I mean, definitely as far as the ease of business is concerned, the things have changed drastically back in India. While we are talking about the rankings, movement from, let's say, from 80 or maybe 90 to 63 in last couple of years, but realistically, if you look from 2014 to this time frame today, I think India jumped all the way from you know uh, almost like 150 to 63 or 62 number in terms of rank, and which I can experience and I can feel as well as an end user, or as someone who actually has started the company in India in last 3 or 4 years. So generally, I mean, in terms of setting up the office, basically getting the registrations, all the normal, I would say, aspects of starting a business in India, there has been a great and tremendous improvement. And I can attribute this more to the digitization. I mean, the technology that has been really crept in, it has been brought in into the system, not only into the bureaucratic aspect of India, but as well as the political framework as well. And the mix of that is actually helping the companies, especially the companies outside of India, to come and do the business in India. uh, Now that's one aspect of starting and having an ease of business. So, and this is more from the technology standpoint and sector, since I belong to this sector. But if you look at the jobs, even, I mean, COVID really brought it down. uh, for the last year, I think the unemployment rate has again you know gone down significantly, especially in last 2 quarters for India. I would say Q3 and now Q4 for Indian financial year. Um, but on the other side, I mean, if you look at the projections for next 5 years, the staffing business in India, it is projected to grow 15% year on year, and which is one of the fastest, I would say. And basically this reflects the growth in the jobs, because staffing is nothing but it's basically steadily increase in the number of jobs in the country. So uh, 15% year on year growth, and we are expected to have at least a $6 or $7 billion of industry, staffing industry only, which is helping people to get the jobs basically within the country. So it's a very, I would say, promising area, very shining area, wherein we can say that yes, there is a great projection in terms of increase of the number of jobs in the country. And again, this is definitely associated with a lot of foreign investors coming into the picture, not only the local companies ramping up their workforce, but a lot of foreign investors as well coming into the picture. So that is helping a big time, and which actually reflects that digitization, getting into this digital mode, bringing in more transparency at the grassroots level, and raising the confidence index, of general, I would say, people outside of the country, is helping it, making it big for the country. So this year, COVID actually brought in, I mean, like a different sort of a condition or a situation for us. And we started basically, developing a product called Vardhan. So, and it was like, necessity is the need of invention. Uh, uh, this product is basically oriented towards um, um, resource optimization. I mean, and we are trying right now, we are in discussions with the state of Himachal, the state of Rajasthan, like Uttarakhand, like multiple states back in India, and trying to deploy this product. Just want to reflect very briefly about it. Since a lot of digitization is happening, so government also need, sort of different tools to optimize their resources. And that's what we are trying to help upon. Again, this will eventually help government increase the number of jobs, at their level. So that's one initiative we took upon. The other thing is, since COVID again, has brought in a lot of learning online, a lot of kids in India, I would say colleges, schools, and everything, everyone is basically right now going for online classes. So this also prompted us to move into the learning space and we developed a product, named Briha. And this again product is something very unique in terms of imparting the learning and helping kids get their education, helping schools or universities or colleges basically to proctor, these people, to assess these people through this tool. So all in all, while you know COVID brought in a lot of gloom and bloom, and still I think it's hitting hard, back in the country, it is also giving an opportunity to look different and helping the country to grow at a different level, not only by increasing the number of jobs, but ultimately helping overall ecosystem to become more transparent and to make it better place for all of us. So Mr. Bhushan, that's from my side. Thank you.
Right. It's really, really very interesting of your sharing your experiences, your positiveness of the changes which have happened in the Indian scene on the ease of doing business. You have also highlighted on the need of the training and education. I think that's very, very important. And that's an area I think where you have contributed a lot. And really, we are really thankful for that, because that's an indirect thing which would really give a further boost to the ease of doing business, because once you know that, and I agree with you, the digitization is the core important thing right now. But the ultimate aim of digitization is what we call as transformation, because we should be able to do things in a much better way once we digitize. We have to improve upon our processes and improve upon our outcomes in those particular things. And all these things would really add a lot in increasing the type of jobs, the quality of jobs, and definitely in ease of doing business. Because once the things are easily done, I think more and more entrepreneurs are going to come, and when more and more entrepreneurs come, more and more jobs will be created. That's really nice to hear from you. And I'm really sorry. I think it will be middle of night for you as far as you are concerned.
You're
So
no, it's fine. I mean, good to be the part of this forum, so that's equally important. But thank you.
that's very good. Okay, now let me go on to the state of Odisha, and I think Mr. Panda, Lingaraj Panda, is there, and he has done a lot as far as the education is concerned and training is concerned. So let us have some inputs from him as to what all he has contributed.
Thank you, everybody. I thank everybody to give me the opportunity to be here. So I am in a unique position wherein I am director with both the school and mass education department and also the higher education department, wherein we are leading the World Bank project. So I'm going to take you through the journey that we went in Odisha. So Odisha is a state which is highly migration friendly, with a lot of migrant laborers all across all across the wage cohorts. So we have a lot of people who are working in construction down south. We have a lot of people who are plumbers, who are electricians, who are all kinds of industrial workers across North India, Western India, and South India, typically in Bangalore and Tamil Nadu. So the greatest challenge we had during the first wave of COVID was when our migrant labor came back in emergency situation, and we had to set up camps for them to stay before they could be allowed to go back to their families. So those were basically my schools were converted to temporary camps where they were asked to stay for 15 days. So 15 days when a person stays there, the best thing, the easiest thing that we could have done, and we started in the state of Odisha, thanks to our Honorable Chief Minister, was a skill census. So we essentially made a GP wise, a Gram Panchayat wise, for a list of what all skills are available, who have been exporting these skills across states and many times across nations. Now, when you get a skill census done, these people will also tell us what are the major challenges that they are facing when they're going, and why their employment or the wage, why the wages are stuck and not able to move beyond a certain glass ceiling. So we identified 3 or 4 things. I'd like to take you into a journey where education comes in maximum, and I wanted to put in why skill, learning, recognition of prior learning, and other issues matter. So 21st century, we have gone beyond wage employment. Now we are looking at value addition per capita of a person employed, and we are also looking at the the additive amount of productivity, or the amount that you're getting per rupee that you pay to a person in labor. So a person who's a plumber coming from X place, if he makes 300 rupees a day and his skill is at, let's say, 100 level, and a person is coming from Y place, and if he makes rupees 1,000 per day or per hour, and his skill level is 300. So you can totally see that there is a quantitative or a qualitative measure that defines productivity, that defines ease of doing business, and that defines the future of jobs in the incoming economy, or for the economy. First thing that most of the labor said, sir, we have been doing handloom industry for the past 6 generations. Sir, we have been doing fishing, we have been doing farming, we have been doing plumbing, we have been doing carpentry, we have been doing stonework. But sir, what piece of paper, what piece of degree do I have to show it to my employer? And let us be quite honest, we are having FDIs, we are having people from other countries coming in and investing in India, and they're looking for workers which have portable, recognized degrees. I have a 45-year-old person who's incredibly skilled. The person is being played in an informal economy. He can never be part of a formal economy paid from dollars from the United States as long as his degree is not recognized. Secondly, sir, if I want to turn an entrepreneur, I have a skill set. I have 15 people from my village, and we are doing this job. Who's going to give me loans when I don't have a pay stub to show, which is tax paid, and certain degrees to show? Sir, this is an economy, and ma'am, everybody would agree that a person who says that I am from IIT, this and this, and I am this and this, gets a loan. They get a Series A funding. They get a Series B funding. What about these guys? And these small entrepreneurs across villages and across towns and across our urban areas and across our semi-urban areas are the ones who are going to be the next 21st century India's story. These are the guys who are going to make homes. They are going to be the new taxpayers. These are the guys who are going to solve the problem of the India story. And so I have worked across in Sambalpur also, and I was made personally responsible for the migrant labor coming from Tamil Nadu. And I have a unique story here. Lot of Tamil Nadu people who are coming back, they were handloom workers. So tell me something, you have handloom workers who have been working across generations, who training was happening across temples and the yards. And these people are telling us, it's no longer profitable for me to do this. I don't want my son and daughter to do this. It's an emotional issue where we are not able to preserve our traditional knowledge. And this is a very, very lucrative business. Internationally, when you sell these things, these are very lucrative. But our inability to capture this particular knowledge, convert it into a sustainable training program, a sustainable trainer of trainer programs. You have to have the best trainers who are going to train people under them and have very strong so-called Guru Sishya Paramshara, which is going to preserve our traditional knowledge across a lot of things. I'm just giving a handloom as an example. Carpentry is another good one, that is Bangalore Center. But I almost in all of my talks, I found that the workers are hailing from states like Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and other places. So being in higher education and being both in school and mass education, my challenge that was thrown to me is, where are the skill gaps within our schools, within our higher training institutes? So I don't work with the industries department, but government of Odisha has a very robust ITI and very robust skilling program that has started under the auspices of our Honorable Chief Minister to address these gaps. The ease of doing business and the job market that is coming in the future will not only depend upon the SOPs given by the state. Digitization is just the first step to recognize these problems and are there. But it is going to be the vision of the 10 years, the 15 years, and the 30 years of what we are going to look at. Are we looking at a university that is going to teach carpentry? Are we looking at a university that is going to design the new pattern of sarees? Are we looking at universities or training institutes or such kind of guilds that are going to protect good plumbing? What about their internal problems? What about their ombudsman? So a plumber has a problem with another plumber. Where does he go? These are the problems that we are facing in the next 5 to 10 years. Without going into a lot of details, in our education sector in Odisha, government of Odisha, a high-level committee meeting under the Honorable CM, we have been tasked to create the next hub of trainers, next hub of trainer of trainers. That is teacher training. I'd like to draw your attention to something very unique. CBSE has 4 regional training centers across India. Why I'm taking CBSE as an example? Because it is a highly portable, migration-friendly degree. I am a CBSE trained student who has done his education across 5 states of India, and I'm working in the 6th state. And this is the classic story of everybody who has done under CBSE. So Mysore is one of the main centers. Delhi is a center. Pune is a center, and the other center is Bhubaneswar. Sir, I would also like to draw another attention that Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya has a elite English language training institute in Bhubaneswar. When we went to start finding where are our people who are going to man the position of training, creating manuals, creating these uh, preservation of knowledge within our government systems to ensure that the next generation of administrators like me can build in policy. These institutes take time. Education is the greatest and the most patient investment that you can make in the ease of doing business, sir. And I believe that Odisha is slightly unique because we reached 2.1 replacement level TFR fertility rate in 1991. Across history, we have seen that businesses and industry has been direct correlation with the demographic dividend. The amount of employable population you have in your 20s, 30s, and 40s make a huge difference. Sir, Odisha is slightly different, wherein our population curve started to flatten in 1991, which happens to be the generation that I come from. And now we are facing a unique problem where the person who's working has to support the cohort below him and the cohort above him while he's working in a migration, while he's a migrant worker working in the Gulf or across in Bangalore or in United States. So the problems that are coming across in the sectors connected to this, for example, geriatric care. Do we have enough hospital beds which are going to give attention to the needs of a 65-year-old? The needs of a female who no longer has anybody who's to support her at the very last stage of her life is very different from what we are facing at right now. A lot of government funding and government focus is going on creation of assets to solve the problems of the younger population. Odisha has actually a slightly different scenario where we have to work on the other end also. So I'd like to end my short presentation right now by saying that the new education policy that has come on, both in the school education, mass education, and in the higher education, aims to plug these gaps. Because the COVID situation has prompted something very unique. Sir, I have 4 staff who are at the age of 55 plus. They could not manage an internet or email account, and today they are at the forefront of doing Zoom-based conferences and PPTs. Sir, we have in a situation where innovation is no longer to be celebrated, it is to be made mainstream. Innovation is a daily requirement without which jobs and ease of doing business is not going to arrive. And I believe that both the government of Odisha and definitely the government of India is prepared looking at the new education policy framework. And that's my 2 cents here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good. Excellent. The only thing is, you're doing a lot of things in a basic core area, and most of your outcomes are actually very, very intangible as far as the job market is concerned, as far as the ease of doing business is concerned. But these are, I think, some of the very, very fundamental pillars on which all these things are really standing. So you are really creating a very, very strong foundation for the future generations to really work on. That's excellent. Okay, let me go to Dr. Shefali Das, whether she would like to, whether she has any questions from all the speakers who had been there in the panel. And Dr. Das, why don't you take over and then you conclude with your recommendations also.
Thank you, Bhushanji. Actually, this panel has been very interesting. We had government sector, we have got private sector, also we have got an enabler in the education platform. So, well, everybody have shown that a lot of things can be done and a lot of things has already happened. So naturally, I'm not going to add anything to what they said, but I've got a few of my own thoughts. We have been, talking about India has jumped to 63 out of 190 in the ease of doing business in the world ranking. Now, everybody knows that this ranking is done on about 10 or 11 parameters. We have done well in some and not done well in others. Now, if you want to maintain, because our obvious vision is to go up to 10, within 10. Well, it cannot happen one day. It has to take some time because we have taken almost 10 years to come to this stage here. So, I was just going through the ranking and parameters in which we had done well or not well. So I realized that some of the things, for example, starting a business, getting permits, getting electricity, uh, trade across borders are something India has done fairly well, not very too bad. Whereas if you look at enforcing of contracts, starting registering property, paying taxes, we are still in the range of 130, 140, 150 like that. So we need to improve those if we have to maintain a kind of a standard. So DP IIT, which is been entrusted with the task, they have been trying to do some kind of a streamlining and working that how we can maintain this. And they have identified certain enablers, and for them technology is the biggest enabler, and single window system, which they have been talking about, has been started. Like people have started using, state governments have started using. But one of the important things which DPIIT has done is identified about 6,000 rules which which are either obsolete or they need lot of tweaking. So government process reengineering, which we have been talking for last 20 years, has to play a very important role now if we have to really continue our growth in terms of ranking in the ease of doing business. So that everybody have to keep in mind, especially the people working in the state governments, because central government is also trying to do its bit, but finally implementation of the businesses will happen at the state level. The permits, the licenses, the tax paying, all these have to be done at the state level. So probably state governments will have to play a much more important role in this. So this is in case of, these are some of my recommendations for ease of doing business. When we come for jobs, we go to a very different scenario now. Now we are in the age of technology, and technology has proven to be a great disruptor. See, the kind of jobs which we were having before, now probably they are not in that much of demand, or the jobs which we were not even thinking about before, they have come into forefront. For example, we used to have brick and mortar establishments where people were employed before, but especially with the COVID, now we see work from home has become a norm. So everybody is trying to go for the WFX if they don't want to stop their work. If you want to go for that, then probably technology has to come to the forefront, and the data centers, network, infrastructure, that becomes important. When So that means physical security of the premises are important, but more important is the network security and the data security. Because when we are doing work from home, we don't want our data to be stolen. So that means even in the IT sector, people who are coding, they are required. But more than that, we need people who are conversant with network security, data security. And then because we are also gathering a lot of data, big data has become important, data analytics has become important, IoTs and how to use IoTs to get into more efficiency out of people or out of processes, that has become important. So that way our jobs have now shifted. This is for the technology-oriented job. Now you come to think of the other sector where we are talking about skilled, semi-skilled, or the other strata. We have been talking about migrant laborers. That when Mr. Panda has talked about how to improve their skill set, do a census, and all that. Now we have got, previously we used to have taxi operators, for example. Now we have got aggregators. Previously used to have restaurants. Now we have got cloud kitchens, and we have got Zomatos. So now it's cooking is not only the main thing, supplying them. Those kind of jobs which we are not even thinking before have now come into importance, and we can, with little bit of training, people can be skilled to deliver on those kind of things. Similarly, small and medium sector enterprises, lot of people are, or even the textile industry, for example, Mrs. Iyer was talking about the ancillary services. So those are the sectors we must now improve. And what is important is lot of skill sets have to be developed, number one, where the training people like Mr. Panda come into picture, their role increases. And similarly, the government sector also is important because they have to formulate the rules to make the life easier for setting up a business. And in the process, we improve both our jobs, employment, and employability. That's all I have to say about this. Thank you, Bhushanji.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Gurcharan, let me hand you back for the further proceedings. I think we have had a very interesting discussion, starting from what we have been doing in the handloom industry and in the labor and the education and even the private initiative taken by Mr. Agarwal. And he's one of the stakeholders as far as the ease of doing business is concerned, who has been doing business in India from US. I think he has given some very good inputs. So I would now hand over back to you.
In fact, very well said and a very interesting panel discussion and a good amount of recommendations from Shefali ji. One uncomfortable question which remains unanswered, which I think we have maybe 5 minutes or so to have everybody express their opinion. What is going wrong that needs to be fixed? Individually, because you come from different spheres of life. So probably in terms of jobs, we can start with Abhishek.
That's an interesting question. Yes, Mr. Agarwal, you want to?
No, absolutely. And thank you once again. I mean, very interesting, discussion altogether, very different perspective. So I mean, very, very valid question, Dr. Gurcharan. What is going wrong? So, see, I would say the implementation of the strategy, we put right strategies in place, we put right protocols in place. So let's assume that, government has targeted or budgeted a certain number of, jobs, new jobs, for a particular year, and they have put in the entire strategy in place. I'm talking, in line with the private sector as well. But the implementation of that strategy at the grassroots level, I think that's something we really need to work upon. And the more we bring in the transparency, the more we bring in the authenticity in the entire process, I think things will change drastically for the country. So that is required, utmost. I mean, we can look at the current COVID-19 situation as well, what India is grappling through right now. So that talks a lot about, again, the grassroots level and the strategy, there's a big difference. There's no big handshake between the two. So that's my perspective.
Mr. Panda, what needs to be fixed and how?
Thank you. I guess a lot of experience goes before answering such questions. So I'd like to just put it a simple analogy. So the government or the country or the economy, it's like a house. You have a leaking faucet, you have a broken window, and you have a broken roof, and the rain is falling now. So it depends. There are a lot of things that are wrong, but what will you fix first? And let me just remind you that there are people throwing stones across your roof also. So it's just a question of priorities. One of the things I would also like to put across is that the percolation of knowledge and training down to the grassroots level. So we have really good, really well-meaning thinkers and the leaders on top, both in the industry, in the government, in the politics, also in the judiciary. But when it comes down to the actual implementation, the actual tehsildar, the actual block level officers in the education department, the people that industry or businesses, and I don't mean the captains of the industry, I mean the regional managers, I mean the site managers, I mean the shopkeepers who they deal with on a daily basis. Now these people from the government end and also from the other ends, that training has not yet percolated to that level. It is going to take time. These processes take time. These are intangibles. These are part of attitudinal shifts. They take time. We have to be patient. We have to believe in the industry. Thank you.
Shailaja ji, if I may ask you, how to fix it? Please unmute yourself.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I've unmuted it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think how do we fix it is a really large question, because to fix it, we need to look at various aspects. If I were to confine it just to say the textile sector and looking at what's the problem there, I'd say one is, of course, reskilling. It's critical today that we reskill the sector to meet the market requirements. And unless we reskill, we are not going to be able to find jobs we're not going to be able to find jobs that sustain themselves over the next 20, 30 years. So that would be probably the one quick priority area that I would say would be essential. Second is technology, looking at technology upgradation. Unless we're going to look at improvements in technology and use that to maneuver and to improve whatever are the gains that skills give us, we are not going to be able to survive in any kind of job market. We're not going to be able to improve the job market. We're also not going to be able to give gains. So that would be probably the second critical factor, that we need to look at technology and how technology can also be levered to ensure improved gains. And thirdly, I would say, yes, looking at where can we improve efficiencies, where can we improve the time taken to complete a piece of work, and what can we do to ensure that less time is taken to get a piece of work done. If it means removing drudgery, if it means ensuring that a new skill is learned in order to improve efficiency. Thirdly, looking at what is the market need in order to, and enabling efficiency to ensure what the market requires is put in place. I mean, I can just give one simple example from the handloom sector. What we did was we had to work with weavers who were earning only about 1,500 to 2,500 per month. They were weaving saris of a low quality. Though the craft had a GI, they were unable to get enough wages for the craft. So a 3-year project, what we had to do first was skill them. So we took about 20 weavers, trained them. Second, we had to look at drudgery problems. The women want to continue the craft. The men don't want to continue anymore. For women to take up the craft, there are certain drudgery occupations where it's too heavy. They can't lift a jacquard with their knees. So we had to look at improvements in the technology that ensured that women could run the looms. Thirdly, we looked at the market, brand the whole product. So once you brand it, the price goes up, the wages go up. The skilling along with the technology upgradation and the market helped us to improve this whole process. Thank you.
A concerted effort on the part of each and every stakeholder is something which is going to show us the path. Because nobody is able to look at the elephant in totality. We're only looking at the pieces of it. And moving forward, when we talk about connected governments and connected government frameworks, this is exactly where, a common chain of command and control, if something is as a national plan devised at the central level, how is it that the states weave their plans into the national plan, and so do the districts, so do the panchayats. So a long way to go, but yes, definitely achievable, and we should soon get there. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion.